Hi guys, former Boris Johnson advisor Dominic Cummings conducted an interview with the media a few days ago where he claimed that the ex-cabinet minister Michael Gove had been secretly instructed by civil servants to cover up exploitation by grooming gangs. The ex-advisor told the reporter that this all happened back in 2011, but felt the need to discuss it now. Well, the man at the centre of all of this, Gove, was interviewed by Tory-friendly GB News, and one very important piece of information was left out. Have a listen to this.
Revealed that Whitehall officials tried to convince Michael Gove to go to court to cover up the grooming gang scandal back in 2011.
Well, Dominic Cummings, who worked for Lord Gove at the time, said Whitehall tried to stop national newspapers exposing the scandal.
Andrew Norfolk at the time started to try to report the issue. The council went to officials inside the Department for Education and said, we want to bring a judicial review to have the courts suppress the Times' reporting and not allow it to happen. So what we ended up doing was saying to Michael Gove, you should write to the council and say that if you bring this judicial review, we will actually appear in court on behalf of the Times, not on behalf of you. That obviously blew up the judicial review attempt by the council to keep it secret, and then Norfolk could publish his piece in the Times.
And I'm very happy to say that Lord Gove joins us now. You've heard what Dominic Cummings had to say there. What do you recall from that period on those claims?
Well, Dominic's account is broadly absolutely correct. So Andrew Norfolk, the very brave, now sadly deceased reporter at the Times, who was responsible more than anyone for initially uncovering the grooming gang scandal, had been investigating Rotherham. It was the case that he wanted to publish details that related to one particularly tragic case. Rotherham Metropolitan Borough Council at the time didn't want the full details revealed. They approached the government and the Department for Education, where I was Secretary of State at the time, asked us to join them in a legal case in order to prevent the Times publishing. I looked at the material alongside Dominic and some other people in the department, and we contacted Rotherham Council and we said, yes, we will intervene in this case, but on behalf of the Times, because it's absolutely vital that the truth be told.
Dominic Cummings said that there were some officials within the Department of Education who were more hesitant than that, who didn't want you to intervene on behalf of the Times. What do you recall about that in particular?
Yes, it was absolutely the case that there were those who thought that it was appropriate for us not to intervene. So the documents in question revealed some details about one particular victim, and it was argued by the council and by some officials who were sympathetic to their case, that revealing everything about the case might mean that other potential victims, other family members might be adversely affected. And there was also an argument that the council itself was making improvements, and that as a result of these improvements being made, that would be imperilled, potentially, if there were adverse publicity. And I think those arguments were made in good faith, but my view, Dominic Cummings' view, was that it was far more important that we told the truth. And the background to some of these decisions lies in the concept of what is known as serious case reviews. If a young person or a person who's been identified as at risk of abuse or neglect dies or faces some terrible consequence as a result of that abuse, then it's the responsibility of the local authority to conduct a review. In the past, before I was in government, before Dominic was my advisor, these reviews, when they were published, were censored and redacted. You could tell almost nothing from them. And one of the things that we did was to insist that there be full publication. The sort of social work establishment at the time said that this would be unfair, there'd be finger-pointing towards professionals. My view, very strongly, was that the only way to learn the lessons was by making sure that you had the greatest possible transparency.
Do you fear...
Okay, let's assume, and this is a massive assumption, let's assume that both Dominic Cummings and Michael Gove are telling the truth. I know that's a massive assumption considering who these people are. But let's say, for the sake of argument, both Michael Gove and Dominic Cummings are telling the truth about this. Well, the question obviously is, why now? This happened, according to both of these individuals, in 2011. So what have you been doing over the last 14, 15 years? were in a position of power to do something about this. And you did nothing about it in 2012, 2013, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. And last year, your party was in power, you were in a position of power, and you did nothing about it. You didn't even raise this as an issue. Why were you not shouting from the rooftops? Why is it all of a sudden you now come out from under your rock? Dominic Cummings, who we haven't heard from in at least a year, suddenly appears giving an interview about how, well, there was this cover-up back in 2011. Why didn't he do something about it in the meanwhile, when his party was in power? Why didn't he tell Boris Johnson? He had the ear of Boris Johnson. Why didn't he tell Boris Johnson to do something? Boris Johnson was the Prime Minister. Why are these people suddenly talking about this cover-up now? Well, we know the reason, because it's about bringing down the Labour government. They don't care about the victims. I keep saying this. They don't give a flying F about the victims. It's about using the victims in order to punish the government. What other reason would Michael Gove have, or Dominic Cummings have, to start talking about this now, this week? Remember, they had 14 years to do something about it, to change what the framework, to change the environment within Whitehall. But they decided not to. They were trying to change Whitehall for other reasons, to fill it with sycophants of Boris Johnson and Michael Gove and Dominic Cummings. But they wouldn't change it to suit victims of abuse. Why didn't they do that? Maybe I'm being overly cynical here, but when lying charlatans come out of the woodwork, come out of hiding, suddenly when there's a scandal about a cover-up or a scandal about grooming gangs, and say, well, we were the voice of reason in the room, we were standing up for the victims, we were standing up for the truth, but we decided to remain silent for 14 years until it came up again. Sorry, I'm a little bit cynical when it comes to that. You were in a position of power and you decided to do nothing to change the environment within the civil service to benefit the victims. And now all of a sudden you say, well, we should have done something. And of course, you're trying to throw civil servants under a bus because you don't care about the civil servants in the same way as you don't care about the victims. This is about bringing down the government, getting the Conservatives back into power. That's all they care about. They only care about power. They don't care about the victims. They don't care about the poor. They don't care about the grooming gangs. They don't care about immigrants. They don't care about anything apart from power. And they'll do whatever they can to achieve that. Kemi Badenoch, this week, describing what's happening as a victory. Not for victims, but for the Conservative Party. She sent out an email to members of the Conservative Party saying, we won. That's their goal. It's to get back into power. It's not to help people unless it's multimillionaires, billionaires and donors. When will people wake up and realize this? Dominic Cummings does not care about the victims. Michael Gove does not care about the victims. They only care about power. Sorry for my shouting, but it's so frustrating. These people are charlatans. They need to be called out.